Hey guys, it's Penguin here, and welcome back to another goal making video. Today, this is going to be part 4 of our TSM tutorial series, and today we're going to be focusing strictly on crafting operations and just kind of setting up those type of operations. I have covered this topic before in the overall operations/groups tutorial I did, but this is just more specific only for the crafting operations. So if you're looking for any other types or you're looking for a more broad sense of explanation, feel free to check out that video. But without further ado, we are going to get right into it. Personally, I believe that crafting operations is one of the most important operations that you can set up, besides the actual posting operations. But the reason for this is that it can actually save you a ton of time, especially if you are in a ton of markets. Now, this is just for example, right now I am in a fresh TSM. All I have is a few groups, but all of my operations, I don't have any of them. So I'm just going to take you through like a scenario if you did not use the operations, and then I'm also going to show you how to create them and how to use them in different scenarios. So on my server, I sell bags, I sell legendaries, I sell potions, I sell basically everything I can. So if I was somebody who does not have these operations set up, I would have to check these out, by just like looking at my mailbox. So if I go through here, as you can see, I've sold some tomes, I've sold some spectral agility potions, I've sold some tenants, some legendary gear, I also sold some novice gear. So if I were to, see if I'm out of it, I would have to either look it up. So I could type in, desolate leather, and as you can see, okay, I still have a few green check marks. So, okay, I'm not out of any of this stuff. Or I can go back to my favorites list, and as you can see, okay, I still have 58 spectral flask of power left, but I am out of phantom fires, and I'm also out of spectral strength. So I need to go craft, 200 more of those. It actually looks like I'm also out of bags, and they're in the profitable range, so I need to go craft 20 of those. Same with the lightless silk pouch. I also am out of those, so I need to craft 20. And then also I sold some of the Tome of the Still Mines, but I still have 72 left, so, I might not go craft that. So that's just something that would go through my head if I didn't have operations. So now, I would go onto my tailorer, I would go to my shrouded cloth bags, queue up 20 of them, craft them up, then I would have to log off and I would have to, go over to my alchemist and remember that I need to craft the spectral strengths as well as the spectral fire, and then of course just make my way. I'm also out of food, I need to go make some food, all of that. And this is very easy to do. Like, it's completely fine if you only sell, let's say potions and enchants. You can just have it on this favorite list, and just with a glance you'll see a check mark or no check mark. But whenever you're dealing with novice gear, Crafter's Marks 3 gear, you're dealing with potions and bags and enchants, it gets very, very complicated and very, very hard to keep on top of, especially if you're on a high pop server where you're getting a ton of sales. So that is when the crafting operations, actually become useful. So just real fast, I'm going to open up the TSM and we're going to move over to the operations section. Then we're just going to create a new one. So, thankfully, I believe that crafting operations are one of the easiest operations to understand. I would say mailing is probably the easiest, but crafting is just right up there with that. So, we have a very few amount of options. Alright, so going into the actual settings of the operation, I'm going to skip the minimum restock and go right back to it, but the first one we're going to be talking about is the max restock quantity. Now, this is how many items that you want maximum restocked. So, it's kind of what the name says, but in this example, I'm going to talk about bags. So, generally, I like to stock my bags in groups of 11. And the reason for this is because if somebody has a fresh character, they will generally buy 4 bags for the actual inventory, and then they will pick up 7 more bags for their bank. So in general, people normally buy 11. And because of that, I'm going to have my max restock quality to 11. So I don't want any more than 11 bags. Then we have the minimum restock quantity. And so what this means is that it will not restock this item until it reaches this number. So for example, let's say we are selling, we're selling off bags and we don't want to restock until we're about like halfway out, let's say. Then we could set this to, like 5. And so what this means is that it will not restock until you have to restock 5. So we're going to have 11 bags to start with. Let's say somebody buys 1. We're still down to 10. If we click that restock button, it will not restock because it is still waiting to restock 5 at once. So, it's going to wait until we hit that 9. We're going to hit that 8, 7, and finally, whenever we hit that 6 mark, if you hit restock, it's going to say that you need to restock 5, and because that is our minimum, then it's going to work perfectly. Generally, I use this minimum if I'm selling like harder to get things. Let's say I'm selling Vial the Sands or, Mechano Hogs or kind of those old world mounts that sell a bit slow. You can use this method to, restock in bulk instead of just every single time whenever you sell one off. But generally, I do like to keep this at 1. And what this means is that as long as you do not have the max restock quantity, it will always restock. So that's really up to you, but generally I always kind of keep it on 1 so I can always restock. The next little section that we have is the minimum profit amount that you want for this specific item. Now, this is when you can make operations very specific, or you can make the operations very broad. For this example, since this is kind of targeted towards bags, because, we're choosing 11, we can still make this broad by using a percentage. Like now, as you can see, we're using a static number of 100 gold. So at any point, if we hover over an item, for example, like this hood, if this operation was applied to this hood, it would restock because I'm making 7,000 gold profit. But let's say right here, we're not making profit, but let's say this was a positive 53, even though it's negative right now, let's say this was a positive 53, it would still not restock because we are using a flat rate of 100 gold. But we can change this up by making it a little bit more broad by using a percentage. So if you guys are familiar with auctioning operations, generally you use kind of like 110% crafting for like posting, let's say, or you use 115%, anything in that sort of nature. So in this case, for minimum profit, you will want to use a percentage without that 100 in front. So in this case, let's use 10% crafting. So the minimum profit amount that you need is 10% crafting. If we want to apply this to numbers, let's say we're selling an enchant for 100 gold, we would be having to make 10 gold profit in order to actually restock this item. Generally, for me, I keep this anywhere between, like 10 to 20%. It really just kind of depends on, what you're selling, how much you want to restock, how much profit you personally want to make out of it. But normally, I just keep this around 10 to 20% to get good profit margins. Then we have another setting, it's called the crafting value, and this is when you can adjust certain items crafting if that's something you want to do. Generally, I do not touch this setting because it's definitely more complicated, but this can be used if you are buying a certain something or trying to craft a certain something, trying to override that default cost. If we want to hit yes, as you can see, now we can just type in the actual craft value of the bag. So an example for this, let's say we are trying to sell the shrouded cloth bags, and right now TSM is trying to tell me that the crafting value of these bags is 140 gold, but I know because I've bought my shrouded cloth very, very cheap in the past, that my real actually crafting cost of this item is 120 gold. So what I can do is I can actually type this in, and so whenever it's calculating profit, despite whatever this hover over says in terms of profit right there, it will always use the override crafting value that I put right here. So of course, this does not need to be a static, just number of 120 gold. I can use item numbers and I can use item IDs to kind of do my own equation if you are trying to use that. but this is good if you're trying to use some custom price sources. But generally, I feel like I never really use this setting, but it can be very useful if you're kind of trying to do this type of thing. But for this case, we're just making a normal kind of operation, so we're going to toggle this no. Then lastly, you have the simple management and group management options, and so what you can do is you can of course ignore this on any realm or character that you want, and then lastly, you can finally apply it to a group. In this case, we made it for bags, so I'm just going to go through Shadowlands, go to tailoring, and select bags, add it to group, and there we go. It is now officially added. Then lastly, what I like to do is just rename the name of the group so it just kind of makes sense in my head. So, for example, I can call this, 10%. So that knows that it's 10% crafting value. I'm going to be restocking for a minimum of 11. And so something just like that name, let's say I'm quickly trying to find, an operation that restocks 11, something like that, it's very easy to tell. Of course, you can also just name it bags, or you can name it bags in front like this. It's really up to you, but the name just doesn't really do much. It's for your own organization. But just to show you the very simple ones that I generally always use is we are just going to create a few operations, and in this case, we're going to use 15%, and I'm going to be restocking, 200. Generally, if we're restocking 200, I would say this is probably for potions or for food or any of those mass items that you're always selling. Or let's say Tome of the Still Mines or the missives, you will make a large chunk of these. So, like I said before, I always keep this on 1 because I don't really care whenever it restocks. And then also, because we put 200, that max restock is going to be 200. And because I put that 15%, we are going to use 15% crafting, and just like that, I can go under here and apply it to whatever groups that I want. In this case, like I said before, I'm going to use it for, let's say, large meals. I'm going to use it on flask and potions. I'm also going to use it on tomes and missives. Just like that, I added that to my groups, and now they are all applied. That's the great thing about crafting operations is that you can use these for a wide variety of things, and it's very, very broad, so you don't have to have a ton of these. What we can do now is we can actually just make a duplicate by clicking this button, and then we can rename this to, let's say, just 20. So it's the same exact operation, but instead of doing 200, we are now crafting 20 items. So we're still using that 15, we're still using that 20, and I'm going to apply this to, let's say, enchants, because I sell, about 20 at a time. That seems good to me. And also we can apply this to, let's say, like bardings and armor kits. Of course, this can be up to your discretion, but I'm just kind of making this for an example. But what we have here now is we have a bag operation. So we're going to be crafting bags, 11 of them. We are now crafting about 200 of each of these items, and now we have one set to 20. So now what we can do is if we want to go into this crafting operation, we can go under TSM groups. Let me just deselect everything. And now we can go into here and let's say, okay, I want to restock potions and let's say inscription. So I can go through here, go through my alchemy, select my flask and potions. Let's say I also want to do my enchants, and then I also want to do my tomes and my missives. All I have to do now is hit restock group, and just like that, it has restocked exactly everything that I need. And as you can see, I'm going to be investing about 360,000 gold, and I'm going to be making about 400,000 gold on top of that. So basically, I'm going to be able to double my money. And like I said before, we attach the potions to that 200 group. So generally, all of these potions need a full restock because I'm out of them, like I showed you before. But I do still have about 102 of the spectral intellects. So TSM is telling me I only need to craft 28. We can go down and look at the enchanting. once again, I have that 20 group attached to that. And so as you can see, a lot of them do need a full restock, but some of them only need about half, some need about 16, and some only need 2. So TSM will tell you exactly how much you need in order to reach that maximum restock quantity, and you're not shuffling around through the auction house trying to figure out exactly what to do. Then, lastly, we have the inscriptions, and as you can see, once again, I am completely out of missives, but like I showed you before, if we just want to take a look, I currently have about 72 Tome of the Stone Mines on the auction house, so I only need to restock about 128. So, like I said before, this is just a great way to kind of save you a bunch of time. I mean, I could have gone through this and, look through my active auctions or, do it through this menu and kind of calculate, okay, I don't see a lot of enchants on here. I could also, go through the process. If I want to pull up enchanting, I could click through here and be like, okay, do I have any? Oh, okay, I only have 3 on the auction house. I'm going to queue up. I'm going to clear this. I'm going to queue up 17. We only have 4, or we only have 16. I need to queue up 4. We only have 3. I need to queue up 17. So, of course, you can do this method if you are only on a few markets, but once you're in a ton of markets, you're dealing with different ranks of legendaries, you're dealing with a ton of different potions. It can definitely save you a lot of time and a lot of energy by just setting up these basic operations. I mean, this video is about 15-20 minutes long, and a lot of it was explanation, but probably that setup process took us anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. But really, it could take you under that amount of time if you just know exactly how to do it. And then you're good to go for basically the rest of time, unless you want to adjust a few things. So this is just a great way to utilize TSM. It's one of the simpler methods that you can do, but it's just very, very effective. And I highly recommend you just trying to check it out. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please join the Discord. That is when I'm going to be announcing when I'm starting my live streaming back up. Currently, I'm taking a break due to college, but I will keep you guys updated first on that Discord. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and of course, have a good day.